The psychology and the behind-the-scenes life of law enforcement, not as simple as you may think.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Hey, good news. North Korea just shut down all its nuclear capability, and we've got a deal. It happened fast. Sorry. I'm a little punchy. We're trying to follow the whole North Korean situation, and you know, on Fridays, if you watch the show regularly, if you don't, you're welcome for the first time. Welcome in. We don't talk the contemporary 24-hour news cycle issues on Friday because we record the show on Thursday. I just figured this thing is moving fast enough that you might get a kick out of that. Flag me 15 yards for unsportsmanlike conduct. I enjoy the Friday programs recorded on Thursday because I get a chance to kind of spread it out a little bit and hang with our guests and talk more in depth about things that are hopefully compelling and interesting to you. And tonight we have a conversation from a local guy who is who's written a book and who has quite the story on both a memoir level and also some messaging to us about law enforcement and the challenges of it behind the scenes. He is well known for a compelling raid in New Bedford years ago, and he's had his share of coverage. Now he's going to get his share of book sale interviews, and we welcome Eric Caron to the broadcast. Nice to have you.
Nice to be here.
Did you hear the latest on North Korea that we just resolved
the
the
whole
whole situation?
Jeez.
No, it's just funny, as we tape the program on Thursday, Pence throws Libya up. Korea says Pence is a dummy.
Yes.
Korea threatens nuclear Armageddon. Trump pulls out. Who knows, right?
The future is not quite certain.
No. Well, you know what? Truth of the matter is, I'm starting to settle into the notion that the future's never been really certain, no matter what the administration.
True.
Congratulations on your book.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Switched On. Give me the 36,000-foot meaning of the title first.
Well, I've learned how to be switched on from my dad, who was my hero, a shoeshine boy. And he taught me everything I needed to know about being switched on for life when I was just 10 years old. He joined the Marine Corps. He came back after serving and became a New Bedford police officer and had 7 children. And he basically trained myself and my twin brother as little Marines. And he gave us basic principles. And those 3 basic principles define what switched on, for me, what it means.
And they are?
They are train the mind through education. It's your ticket to life's party. And without it, you can't get in, number 1. And number 2, train the soul through faith, because you're going to need it during those dark, lonely, challenging days. And the third one, just as important, is about training the body through eat, sleep, and exercise. I talk about C in the book, sleep, eat, and exercise, every day. And without those 3 basic principles, you're off balance. And you're not switched on.
All right, so you got a little bit of everything going on here in this book. You got a little bit of a self-help thing going. You've got an incredible play-by-play narrative of a pretty compelling case you were involved with. You've got some seemingly political philosophy that comes through here. So in the short time that we have here this evening, I don't know how much of it we'll all accomplish, but we should start with at least your personal background. Local guy, dad became a cop. You lost him early.
Yes, at 15 years old.
You had 7 kids in the family. You write some early on in the book. There's some fun stuff about what it was like when the Caron family came into the shopping market.
Absolutely.
It was pretty much a zoo. Huh?
It was. Get out of the way
Yeah.
with 3 shopping carts full of food.
Yeah, you lived modestly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
9 people fighting for a bathroom.
A single bathroom.
Is there any self-help in terms of how people handle vacations and the like when everyone's in kind of in a camping or uncomfortable place?
I talk about that in the book. Really, through that experience, that single bathroom taught us teamwork and how to
hold it.
How to hold it. Yeah.
Number 4.
Yeah. Number 4. How to hold
the
it.
healthy amount of time to hold it, right?
And so it really taught us about helping one another to get out that door at 7:30 a.m. And to get to work. My dad, and for all of us to get to school on time.
Yeah.
It was a challenge.
You have the sub-headline here is the heart and mind of a special agent. Define special agent. Your career as a special agent is in what category?
Yeah, a special agent for the U.S. government / criminal investigator really could mean anything from a Secret Service special agent to a DEA special agent to a Homeland and Security investigation agent to an IRS special agent. Essentially, a special agent's doing criminal investigations for the U.S. government in a wide variety of topics, transnational crime.
And you were in it for how long?
25 years.
You're now in private security.
I am. I'm consulting, and I teach at the Massachusetts Maritime Academy.
How do you feel about the current climate and discussion of law enforcement coming out of the White House?
Well, I enjoy, quite frankly, the support from the administration as it relates to law enforcement. I think first and foremost,
I guess my question was much more involved with deep state inferences and the suggestion that the FBI is tainted, dirty. You can't really trust anybody. At the same time, in the same breath, suggesting that the rank and file is doing a great job. I mean, what do you sense is the general message?
I think that yes, correct.
How are you receiving that?
I don't particularly like the rhetoric that's coming out of the White House at times. Talking about, the FBI and how they're not to be trusted, essentially. I think it does a disservice to not just the men and women of law enforcement at the FBI, but to our society as in general.
In all the years that you worked as a special agent in all of the agencies that I'm sure you interfaced with, how many officers did you find were dirty or corrupt or had the wrong intent?
Very few. Personally, I worked internal affairs for a year. So I had that big picture perspective. I worked in Washington at the headquarters level. And I would say, less than 1%.
Was there a system of self-service and any kind of dichotomy between what law enforcement was doing and what the country needed in the White House? Did you feel that they were running 2 separate races at any time, or was this really an imperfect but well-intended culture and community?
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, I do.
Did you read Comey's book?
I did not.
After you're done selling yours, you ought to read Comey's book. It'd be an interesting take to see, how he reflects on the rights, the wrongs, and he also, by the way, writes a memoir that has 3 or 4 chapters in it about his dealings with Trump. And I think the only attention has been the dealings with Trump. You've got a whole bunch of messages in your book, so you tell me which one would you like when we come back to have the most focus on? What's the subject matter that you think is most intriguing and people ought to read?
I think the New Bedford raid that took place in 2007.
All right, we'll do that when we come back. Don't go anywhere. Whatever. The book is switched on, and I know that you've got a book signing coming up sometime soon, right?
I do, next Wednesday, the 30th, at the Fairfield Inn.
Yeah, okay. We have information on that, of course, on our website at foxprovidence.com. All the links to the information on the book. Tell me about this famous raid in New Bedford.
Yes. Well, it simply started by a worker inside who basically picked up the phone.
You were acting as a special agent for who at this point?
For Homeland Security investigations.
All right.
Yeah, out of Boston.
Okay.
I actually downgraded in Washington after 9/11 and came back home.
Took a cut, right?
I took a cut in pay and status. And
Reason was?
duty to country, and I couldn't do that behind the desk at Interpol, quite frankly.
Okay.
So I came back home, ended up in a national security group, and one day received information from an anonymous caller who said, basically, I work at this facility called Michael Bianco Inc., and it's loaded hundreds of illegal aliens inside, and we're doing defense contracting, and the working conditions are deplorable, and those jobs should be going to U.S. citizens, my friends and my family, she mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the investigation started.
How long did the investigation go?
Up until the search warrant, about a year.
Close
to a year.
A lot of work.
A lot of work, a lot of surveillance.
So the raid was a big day.
It was a huge day. I mean, we had an undercover operation going on. We had a female agent hired as an illegal alien. We had, documents provided to her by a company across the street, which was working in concert with the company, producing counterfeit documents. So the undercover agent was hired and worked there for some time.
So you got all this covered. Purpose of the raid was what?
Purpose of the raid was really national security. The fact of the matter is, we have a U.S. defense contractor manufacturing defense goods. And if we haven't learned anything from 9/11, that fact of the matter is terrorists are only limited by their imagination. And first and foremost,
they were making what?
They were making vests for the U.S. military. These vests were basically the harness to input the ballistic panels. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they were making hundreds of thousands of these vests.
Okay, and what was your worry, that they could be faulty?
One, if not just faulty, more in the idea of if a terrorist infiltrated the facility, WMD chemical could be placed on these articles and then worn by our men and women. I mean, just a few days ago in the UK, 2 days ago, there's a terrorist on trial, okay, within the last 48 hours, and he was going to kill a prince, one of the officials from the UK government, and he also talked about poisoning ice cream in supermarkets. My point is, again, the terrorists are only limited by their imaginations, and we don't know what's in the hearts and minds of illegal aliens.
So these illegal aliens were mostly from where?
Mostly from South Central America, but we also do know that Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups have found their way and recruited folks.
The raid occurred when?
In 2007,
right, March. So, I mean, we're right in the, not that we don't have that same kind of interest we should today, but we're still reeling, 5, 6, 7 years. We're actually in the heat of, and we're in the middle of the debate internationally and through the White House as to what kind of treatment we give to terrorists. I mean, we're still in the midst of waterboarding and trying to figure out what's going on with that. So this is a high time, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so you orchestrated this raid.
I did.
It was successful.
In my eyes.
Yeah. What came out of it specifically?
Well, I think.
How many people were detained?
What
happened to the company?
So we had information that there were up to over 400 illegal aliens inside at the time of the raid.
How many employees?
Close to 500.
So 80% or so.
Correct.
Okay. How the hell did that happen?
That's a good question. We had the Department of Defense inspectors on site who clearly saw that something wasn't right, and they turned a blind eye to it.
Why?
I think, quite frankly, there was a surge going on in Iraq and Afghanistan at the time, and I think they needed this equipment. At the end of the day, I think they were so behind in
and you got a very Latino population in there, right? And perhaps not necessarily the population that you're worried about, or some would be worried about at that time. You saw it differently.
I did see it differently.
Okay.
Besides the transnational criminals that find their way into this place.
What happened? Remind everybody real quickly because I want to get to some other things. The result is what happened with the company?
It went out of business.
Okay.
Then another company came in and fulfilled the orders.
Got it.
The president was sentenced to a year, and his officers, 2 of his officers, were also arrested and pled guilty.
What happened to the 400 people that were in there working?
We arrested about 361 illegal aliens, processed, and a percentage, I want to say approximately 150 were actually deported. Many of them were, had the opportunity to see an attorney, an immigration attorney, and stayed through our immigration laws.
So what's the moral of the story of the raid and your activity there? What's the takeaway?
The takeaway is we have to understand that we are at war. Maybe undeclared, but we're at war on 2 fronts. We're at war with the Middle East extremist groups that are operating out there, and we have transnational crime groups operating here in the U.S. And we need to control our borders. Simple as that. Because, up to 25,000 in 2017, 25,000 deaths in Mexico alone due to drugs.
And control the borders means to do what?
Obviously, we need a multi-layer approach. It's not just build a wall. Okay? The wall is necessary. We need a better visa system for lawful people to come to America. We need to increase the amount of people who come to America lawfully, and we need enforcement. So it's got to be a multi-pronged approach. It's not just build a wall.
More when we come back. Stay with us. So I think a pretty compelling conversation on the New Bedford raid here with Eric, and read the book. It's called Switched On, and there's a lot going on here. It's a memoir. It's a discussion of life lessons learned in law enforcement, the needs of law enforcement on a personal level as well, and some life tips too. We kind of walked through that immigration conversation a little bit. Are you fist pounding over the politics of immigration here, or what are you trying to say? This immigration thing. Let me tell you something. About 5 years ago, we ran a poll, and the number 1 concerns of America, immigration was on the bottom of the pollable list. The rhetoric of this last presidential campaign obviously has changed that dynamic. No matter which way you stand, I mean, it has raised the level of conversation about this high. Sanctuary cities is a concept and a problem for a lot of people. I have mixed feelings about how that kind of whole thing runs out. Yeah. But this notion that we're going to deport 15 million illegals in this state, in this country, is, I think, a complete waste of time. What we do in advance, I think, is up for all sorts of discussion. This focus on wall, I think, has been way too simple for the complexity of this whole thing. So, I mean, those are my takes from this. Do you agree with any of that?
I do. I think we need to do a better job.
I just don't think there's a winning polar opposite argument in the immigration conversation. If anything needs consensus and a lack of agenda other than the safety and security of the country, unless until we get that, we're not going anywhere here.
Right.
Yes? No?
Yes.
All right. Give me a quick executive summary because I want to touch on a couple other things.
I think we need to improve our visa system. I think we need to invite lawful citizens into the U.S., and we don't do a very good job in doing so. Meaning we have a visa cap at maybe, let's just say 5,000 Pakistanis. Why? Or,
You think it's arbitrary?
Yeah. I think...
It's kind of like an import quota system.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I've worked in Dubai. I worked overseas for 4 or 5 years. I've worked at the consulate and the embassy. There's no reason why we shouldn't be allowing lawful people to our country.
So the number could be a lot larger.
It should be.
Yeah.
And we should be doing a better job bringing them here and making sure that they're lawful, and then when the visa is up, they do leave. And so they can come back.
Tracking those who are in the country is
That's
something
right.
the country doesn't do very well.
Absolutely. We
And
don't have a track.
and that's something that you were engaged in.
Yes.
Real quick on the special agent aspect and what you've learned about federal law enforcement and even local law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
What are we missing about the stress and the lives that they lead?
Yeah, you know, good question, Dan. It's, you know, we're human beings with hearts and minds, obviously. And, you know, we're not meant to see some of the things that we see. And the damage that's done to law enforcement officers' brains can't be seen. And many of them are suffering from PTSD, and many of them kill themselves.
Is there enough ongoing orientation to that? You know, officer comes back from a hellish situation on a highway. I often think, especially when we talk Parkland, you know, Parkland and now Santa Fe, God Almighty, Sandy Hook. You know, when those things happen, I don't know how those who were charged with the task of going in and finding that in those scenes ever recover from that.
Correct.
I mean, I would think that once you're into a classroom with little ones that have been taken from the planet that way, that you should be immediately retired. I mean, I don't know how you could cope with that. Am I missing something?
No,
here?
you're absolutely correct. In fact, I do
thank
know.
you. You've done your service. I mean, there's no way that you're going to be right. Hopefully, you'll lead a happy life because we're going to help you lead a happy life. But right?
Correct. I do know ATF agents that had retired over the Sandy Hook case because
just no more.
Right.
They have to work on themselves.
Correct. And that's, you know, more police officers take their own lives each year than do quote unquote on the job.
Yeah. Most of them are men, not all of them. Most of them are men, and men don't speak about their problems anyway.
Correct.
Right? So I mean, this is all wrapped up.
So we need to do a better job educating the public and educating police departments and getting them the funding they need so they can preserve these officers' minds.
It also seems to be a culture thing, though, right? It's not weak to be able to talk to cops about what they've just dealt with, you know, in an overnight or whatever situation.
Absolutely.
So you're hitting to a whole bunch of different fields in this book. The book is interestingly laid out because it's like thought process after thought process. So give it a read. The information on the book signing this week is on the website at 6:30. Oh, wrong station, at foxprovidence.com, but it's this week at the Fairfield.
Next Wednesday.
Fairfield
in New Bedford, Mass.
New Bedford, Fairfield.
5 to 9.
Hometown Boy and his book. And remember, sleep, eat well, exercise. Right?
You got it.
Got it. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
All right, final word and we come back. So we head into the Memorial Day weekend. My message on Memorial Day is simply this: have a blast with your family, but can you spend 10 seconds thinking and/or thanking somebody who's, you know, serving now in honor of those who are past? It's not a hardship, by the way, to head to a Memorial Day service. The parades are nice, that's good too. Keep the kids focused on the generations that have made our freedom what it is. And it is not cliche to say that every single year. We have some repeat programming apt for Memorial Day, and we'll be back with new programs on Tuesday. Enjoy the weekend. Bye.